Once, Neil Cassidy, was driving through the desert, blazing fast, with a crazed gleam in his eyes, windows down, music screaming from the radio, dust rising like some wild spirit trailing behind us. We were chasing some beat vision, high on nothing but the wind and our own mad energy. Suddenly, a tire blew. Car skidded. We spun into the gravel, laughed like madmen when we climbed out, shaken but alive. Neil just lit a cigarette and said, "Now that's a curveball from God." That's the thing. Life's curveballs teach you more than any classroom. You don't learn truth in straight lines. You find it in the unexpected spinouts.
Welcome to the Undead Sages podcast, where we travel back in time to talk to long-dead wise men and women. Of special interest is the question how sensitive people like you and me can live rich and meaningful lives in our uncertain times. My name is Merijn de Haen, and today we'll be talking to Jack Kerouac. Jack Kerouac was a pioneering American novelist and poet, central to the Beat generation. Known for his spontaneous prose style, Kerouac's seminal work On the Road captured the restless spirit of post-war America. His writing explored themes of travel, spirituality, and rebellion, influencing counterculture movements of the 1960s. A French-Canadian from Lowell, Massachusetts, Kerouac's legacy endures as a symbol of artistic freedom and nonconformity. Join us as we delve into his life, work, and enduring impact on literature and culture. So let's travel back in time to Florida in 1969 and meet him. Jack Kerouac, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Merijn.
Could you tell us about your life?
Well, I was born Jean-Louis Lebris de Kerouac in Lowell, Massachusetts, 1922. French-Canadian roots. We spoke joual at home. French, you know, until I picked up English at school. My childhood was colored by loss early on. My older brother, Gerard, died when I was a kid. That haunted me. Made its way into my writing later. Visions of Gerard. You might have heard of it. I was a dreamy boy, a loner in some ways. But I loved sports, football especially. Got myself a scholarship to Columbia University in New York. But I didn't stay long. Got restless. I was always chasing something, a rhythm, a freedom, a pulse. The war came. I tried to join the Navy, didn't work out so well. Ended up in the Merchant Marine instead. Drifted through cities, jobs, conversations, friendships that spun my head. Then came the writing. Always the writing. I scribbled in notebooks, typed furiously, trying to catch life as it moved. Raw, holy, unscripted. On the Road was my lightning bolt. But there was so much more. Dharma bums, Big Sur, Desolation Angels. I saw myself not as a novelist, but a jazz poet, catching the spirit of the American soul.
Tell us more about the place you grew up.
Lowell, Milltown, gritty and gray, soaked in the sweat of working-class folks. My father ran a print shop. My mother, sweet and devout, kept the home in order. The town smelled of cotton, factory smoke, and bread from immigrant kitchens. The Merrimack River flowed through it all like a song of old ghosts. It was a hard place, but it had soul. The French-Canadian neighborhood, Little Canada, was a whole world in itself. Stories passed around like loaves of bread. Death, laughter, saints and sins. Everything rolled together.
Did you always live there, or did you move to other places at some point in your life?
No, I moved. Restlessness was in my bones. I lived all over. New York, San Francisco, Denver, Mexico City. I hit the road constantly. Trains, buses, hitchhiking, my thumb out, my notebook in my lap. Cities were my classrooms, highways, my confessionals. I went where the spirit pulled me. But I always came back to Lowell, in my heart, if not my footsteps. That place never really let me go.
Take us on a tour of the places that mattered most to you.
New York was electric. Columbia days, smoky bars, late-night cafes, talk with Allen Ginsberg and William Burroughs, jazz blaring from every corner. Denver, wild with the spirit of Neil. He lit that town like a flare. San Francisco held a different vibe, poetic, oceanic, more inward. Big Sur, Big Sur broke me. The cliffs, the ocean crashing like some divine drumbeat. I went there to find peace, but found my own unraveling instead. Mexico City was chaos and color. Lowell was memory and spirit. All those places shaped me, echoed in my words.
Tell us about the intellectual, philosophical, and religious currents of your place and time.
Post-war America was shifting. Folks were conforming, building white fences, chasing comfort. But under that surface, the beats were stirring. We weren't the only ones. We were just louder about it. Existentialism was catching fire. People read Sartre, Camus. Buddhism started weaving into the Western mind. I fell hard for it. The Dharma hit me like gospel. Not the scholarly stuff, more the Zen immediacy, the raw koan of existence. At the same time, Catholicism still gripped me. I couldn't shake the rosary, the saints, the sacred suffering. So I walked a strange path, half monk, half madman, half drunk saint.
Tell us about philosophers or sages that had an influence on you, or to whom you had a relationship of some sort.
Buddha, man, the old smiling one. His teachings opened me up. The Four Noble Truths, the idea of samsara, it spoke to something deep in me. I read the Diamond Sutra, the Lotus Sutra. And then there was Emerson. His transcendentalism seeped into my bones. Whitman, too, with his wide-eyed poetry of America. But my real teachers were people like Neil, crazy, luminous souls who lived wild and true. Cassidy was like a holy fool, a bodhisattva in a jalopy. And Ginsberg, he was my brother in spirit. His mind was sharp, his heart bigger than most. He carried a torch when I was fumbling in the dark.
Did you get involved in any controversies? How were they resolved?
Oh, plenty. They called us degenerates, un-American, filthy beatniks. The publication of On the Road stirred a firestorm. Some loved it, said it was the voice of a new generation. Others hated it, called it immoral, aimless, obscene. But I wasn't trying to be political. I wasn't trying to tear down society. I just wanted to speak truth, show life as it is, not polished or censored. The literary crowd often misunderstood me. I didn't care for their highbrow games. I wanted raw spirit, not academic approval. The controversy didn't resolve. It just echoed, and I let it echo.
Can you tell us about your teachings or life lessons?
Life is holy, even in its grime. That's my core lesson. You don't need to escape it. You need to dive in, feel every inch of it. Let it pass through you like music. Compassion, spontaneity, prisons. Those are sacred things. I believed in the moment, in letting go of plans, and saying yes to the wild ride. I saw beauty in bums, prophets in drunks, poetry in highways. I wanted people to see again, to feel life's pulse, not just walk through it, numb.
How did your teachings stand out from what was already taught in your lifetime?
I broke from formality. No polished prose, no plot-heavy novels. My writing spilled like jazz, improvised, breathless, alive. I didn't preach from a pulpit. I sang from the street corner. My dharma wasn't academic. It was soaked in sweat, booze, and broken shoes. I showed that spirituality could be gritty, that holiness could live in alleyways and bus depots. That was different. That was mine.
How can your teachings be relevant for sensitive individuals who worry about the uncertainties of life?
Because I worried too. I was scared, often broken. But I found solace in surrender. Life's uncertainty isn't a curse, it's a gift. The unknown means anything can happen. There's grace in that. You don't have to have it figured out. Just be kind. Be awake. Be curious. Embrace your sadness. It's proof you're alive. And write it down. Always write it down.
Tell us about your death.
I died in 1969. Internal bleeding. My liver gave out. Too much drinking. Too many ghosts. I was only 47. I was in St. Petersburg, Florida, with my third wife and my mother. I went out quietly, not on the road but in a small room. Maybe that's fitting, maybe not. But I'd lived fast, burned bright, and left a trail of words. That's something.
What else do you think I should know?
Know that I never wanted to be a hero or a leader. I just wanted to feel. I wanted to show that life, even at its messiest, is worth loving. My books weren't instructions. They were songs. I don't want to be mythologized. I want to be heard.
Is there anything we have missed about your life?
Maybe the quiet parts, the prayerful moments, the long walks, the nights I stared at stars, wondering if God was just a beat too. People talk about the road, the chaos, but not the stillness that lived beneath it all. I carried silence with me. That matters too.
Do you have any final words for our listeners?
Yes. Don't be afraid to live offbeat. Follow your own rhythm. Love deeply. Write like your soul's on fire. And remember, there's no final destination, just the journey. The road goes on, always.
Thank you for appearing on our podcast.
It's been my pleasure, Merijn. Keep writing.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Undead Sages podcast. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please share it with your friends, rate the episode, leave a comment, and subscribe to the podcast.